On July 9th, 1971, three unknown kids from Flint, Michigan sold out 55,000 seats at Shea Stadium faster than the Beatles. Within 18 months, sheriff's deputies would seize their equipment in the middle of a concert and their manager would walk away with all their song rights. But the real destruction came when Grand Funk's own bandmates tricked their co-founder into signing away the very name he created. How does a band rise so far, only to be betrayed by everyone, including themselves? Flint, Michigan, in the late 1960s, was a place where the future looked uncertain. The city's skyline was shaped by smokestacks and factory roofs, but inside those plants, the jobs were vanishing. Between 1966 and 1970, unemployment in Genesee County more than doubled, rising from just under 4% to nearly 9%. In a single year, more than 12,000 manufacturing jobs disappeared. For teenagers like Mark Farner, Don Brewer, and Mel Shacker, the assembly line was never a guarantee, it was a warning. Farner's father worked the line at General Motors, but Mark spent his nights practicing guitar in a cramped bedroom, trying to drown out the sounds of layoffs and lost pensions. Don Brewer, already pounding drums in local bars by age 13, watched friends get drafted or laid off before they finished high school. Mel Shacker, fresh from Question Mark and the Mysterians, felt the pressure too. Music wasn't a way out, it was the only thing left. Survival became the motive. When the three found each other, they didn't just form a band, they built a lifeline. They named themselves after the Grand Trunk Western Railroad, the line that cut through Flint's industrial heart. With nothing to fall back on, trust became their currency. So when a fast-talking former DJ named Terry Knight offered to be their manager, producer, and mentor, they handed him the keys. In Flint, survival meant taking a chance on anyone who promised a ticket out. Record buyers and concert promoters could not keep up. Grand Funk Railroad's debut album, On Time, hit gold status, even though it never climbed higher than number 27 on the charts. That kind of demand did not make sense to industry experts. Nobody had seen a band break out like this without a radio hit or a big label push. By 1971, Grand Funk had already sold more than 20 million records. Stadiums across America booked them months in advance, and still fans lined up around the block for tickets. Their albums did not just sell, they flew off the shelves. Between 1969 and 1976, they racked up 6 platinum and 7 gold certifications, a haul that rivaled the biggest acts of the decade. The band tallied 8 top 40 hits and 2 #1 singles, with a total of 19 songs breaking into the charts. Altogether, Grand Funk Railroad moved more than 25 million albums, a commercial avalanche from 3 working-class kids who started with nothing but borrowed instruments and a rented van. The scale of that success left millions of dollars on the table, raising questions that would soon turn their story from triumph to trouble. When the royalty statements finally arrived, the numbers did not add up. Terry Knight, the man who had promised them a way out of Flint, was collecting 16% of Grand Funk Railroad's album profits through his production deal with Capitol Records. The band, Mark Farner, Don Brewer, and Mel Shacker, were getting just 6%. Knight's take was not limited to production. He also claimed a manager's commission, a slice of the song royalties, and a 21% stake in GFR Enterprises, the corporation that handled every dollar from ticket sales to merchandise. For a band that had sold more than 20 million records by 1971, the imbalance was staggering. Don Brewer later explained what it felt like. "We wanted to hear what was happening with the money, and Terry didn't give us the right answers. He gave us the runaround." The structure of the deal gave Knight financial control at every level. Even as stadiums filled and records went gold, the band members were still living on modest weekly stipends. The profits, the real money, flowed through Knight's accounts. Each time the band pressed for details, Knight sidestepped their questions, offering vague explanations or promising answers that never came. The trust that had once been their lifeline now felt like a trap. When the truth became impossible to ignore, The band made their move. Knight was fired, cut out of the operation he had built around them, but firing a manager with that much leverage was never going to be clean. Within weeks, Knight retaliated with a lawsuit demanding $57 million, a sum designed not just to win, but to wipe them out. The band's decision to break free would come at a cost they could barely imagine. Terry Knight's response came fast and without mercy. He filed a $57 million lawsuit against Grand Funk Railroad, a figure that dwarfed the band's own earnings and threatened to erase everything they had built. The legal battle dragged on for nearly 2 years, with Knight launching more than 30 separate actions in different courts. The band's lawyer, John Eastman, pushed back at every turn, but the pressure mounted with each passing month. The heart of the case was ownership. Knight demanded control over the band's entire catalog from March 1969 to March 1972, plus a share of future profits, and even oil well investments tied to the band's accounts. The standoff broke into public view on December 23, 1972. Grand Funk Railroad was set to play a sold-out benefit at Madison Square Garden, broadcast by ABC for the In Concert series. As the band took the stage, Knight arrived backstage, flanked by sheriff's deputies, and a court order authorizing the seizure of every instrument and amplifier. Eastman negotiated a delay to keep the peace, but the threat hung over the entire show. The crowd never knew, but the band played under the shadow of losing everything the moment the last note faded. The second the concert ended, deputies rolled in. Roadies watched as guitars, drums, and amps were tagged and carted away. The humiliation was complete. Knight later told VH1 that the contract would have expired in 3 months, and that the band should have just waited. Instead, the settlement left Knight with copyrights and publishing royalties to every Grand Funk recording made during their most explosive years. The band kept their name, but the core of their legacy, those early songs, now belonged to the man they had once trusted most. Mark Farner never imagined the final betrayal would come from the men he called brothers. During the 1996 reunion tour, Don Brewer knocked on Mark Farner's hotel room door after a show, carrying legal documents and a promise of protection. Brewer explained they needed to sign over individual ownership of the Grand Funk Railroad trademark to a new corporation, and he framed it as a safeguard for everyone. Farner, exhausted and trusting, signed on the dotted line. Years later, he recalled, "I honestly thought Don was out to protect our best interests. Well, man, he had me fooled. I signed the whole damn thing away." That signature locked Farner out of the band name he helped create, even though he had written nearly all their songs. A federal injunction soon followed, dictating that any promotion of his own shows must read formerly of Grand Funk Railroad, with strict capitalization, every letter checked by lawyers. The man whose voice and vision built Grand Funk now needed permission just to mention the name. Court records show the battles never stopped. In 2018, Brewer and Shacker filed a new lawsuit against Farner, accusing him of violating a trademark agreement. Just 2 days after Farner's son Jesse died, the court eventually ruled in 2019 that Farner could tour as Mark Farner's American Band, but only under strict naming rules. Farner calls the current lineup the Grand Fraud Tour. He tells fans that it is really dishonest, and that as legal as it may be, it is completely dishonest to the fans. Meanwhile, Grand Funk Railroad continues into 2026 with Brewer, Shacker, Max Carl, and Mark Chatfield. The man who once controlled everything, Terry Knight, was murdered in 2004, stabbed 18 times in his Texas apartment as his daughter watched. The betrayals linger, the wounds remain open, and the legacy is still caught in a fight with no finish line. Today, Grand Funk Railroad tours without the voice that wrote 92% of its songs, while legal battles keep its legacy fractured. The scars of betrayal outlast the music. In the end, what's owned on paper means little if the soul of a band is lost. Share your thoughts below.